Hey parents and coaches, are your kids using the right glove? The most important skill for youth athletes to learn is how to play proper catch. The problem is, most youth gloves are made with bad leather and are too big for small hands. They actually make it harder to play catch. That's why former Major League Baseball shortstop Kevin Smith created Cali gloves. Cali gloves are crafted from 100% Japanese kip leather and are the perfect size for kids. All Cali gloves come with palm slits, finger loops, and elastic wrist lacing that encourage proper hand placement, the right closing patterns, and give kids more confidence to go make plays. Cali gloves even allow parents to break in the glove without stretching out the fit. It's the glove Kevin wishes he had growing up, and the glove all his teammates want for their kids. Visit caligloves.com to learn more and help your kids play better catch. That's Cali Gloves, K-A-L-I gloves.com.
Welcome to this week's edition of In the Clubhouse with EMD Baseball. I'm Andy Kirikides, joined by my wonderful co-host, Mr. Keith Glasser. How we doing?
Great, how are you?
Good. We got a question via the gram from one of our loyal listeners that asked us to talk about, and it's a touch early, but I think it's still a relevant conversation. It gives you some time to prepare and start to have some of these conversations. But you're a 2026 graduate, you're committed, you know where you're going, and you know where you're playing this fall. What are some of the things that you need to think about and plan for as far as the summer goes? Which I think is a really valid question. You know, you're talking about, what stuff do we need to make sure that we're doing in order to prepare for, that first fall season as a college player, which, we've talked about many times on this podcast, whether you're playing in the SEC or you're going to junior college or anywhere in between. It's a pretty big transition, and you want to make sure that you're prepared and you've done everything that you can to put yourself in a position to go and have make a good first impression and go and have a good fall and give yourself a chance to get in the mix for your first college season. So I'm going to take a couple minutes and talk about that and some recommendations that we have and some things that I think, people should be considering and at least starting to plan for. So, on my end, I'll start with the pitching stuff. I think the pitching stuff requires a little bit more communication. And I think that the coaches that you're going to go and play for should certainly have some say in this, right? Depending on how much you throw in the spring, the volume of innings, the number of pitches, how late do you go? Some states in the Northeast, they can, guys can be pitching into mid-June, and, you might be going on to campus at the end of August, and coaches may have different plans for you. They may want to try to find you some innings in a local league. Maybe you're a guy that they think could go fit into a college league potentially to fill some innings. But I think having some conversation, and you don't need to do this today. These guys are just starting their season. But I think as you get towards the middle of your high school season, making sure that you're touching base with that coach, understanding kind of what their expectations are in terms of what do they need you to show up on campus ready to do? Do they need you on campus, 45 pitches ready so you could potentially throw 3 innings? Or is there going to be a build-up time when you get there? Do they have a throwing program that they want you to get acclimated to? Do they have a weightlifting program that they want you to get acclimated to? So I think that communication from a pitcher's perspective, I think, is really important. And you're going to want to take that initiative and make sure that you reach out to the coach and just have a good understanding of what the expectations are. Maybe even start to get comfortable with some of the verbiage and some of the other things that they're going to want you to pay attention to and be ready to do when you get there in the fall. So that's my opening thought on pitchers. I don't know if you have anything that you want to add to that.
If you're the parent of a high school baseball player with college aspirations, you already know the recruiting process can feel overwhelming. Endless showcases, nonstop emails, and big promises with very little clarity. That's why we recommend Diamond College Showcase Camps, the nation's premier academic baseball showcase. At Diamond College Showcases, every college coach in attendance is there with a purpose: to coach, instruct, evaluate, and recruit. Every player is seen, every player is engaged, and every family leaves with a clear understanding of where they truly stand. This is not a mass camp. College coaches run the drills, evaluate every athlete, and provide honest professional feedback that you can trust. Diamond College Showcase camps are built for serious student athletes who value both baseball and academics. If you're looking for transparency, clarity, and a recruiting experience that respects your time and your player's future, Diamond College Showcase is the place to be. To learn more, visit diamondcollegeshowcase.com.
No, not particularly. I just think the communication needs to be there. How you feel, how you feel coming out of the spring season, what your load should be going into the summer, and obviously, I think the one thing, maybe I will add one thing, this is likely going to be one of the longest years of your life as a commit going into college baseball in the fall. So you're going to have your build up in the winter, into the spring, you're going to play spring and then summer baseball, then you're going to play a full college fall into off season for college, which depending on the level, right, you could have individuals, you might not, but there's going to be a whole, it's going to be a lot more of a load than you've been able to kind of carry for the last however many years. So you're going to want to be smart about it, but you also want to be communicating with your coaches as how you feel, what you need to be doing. I think the weight room for position players and pitchers is obviously a huge component to make sure that you're continuing to get bigger and stronger in the weight room. But communicating with how you feel, what you're where you're at, and what the expectation is of you when you get to campus. And I don't mean we expect to be good and compete. Like, what's the expectation when I get there? Do I need to have to could you build in a shutdown period, right, Andy, at the end of the fall, or excuse me, the end of the summer, where you can take an abbreviated 2-week break and then ramp back up because, hey, we're not actually going to start the fall until the end of September, beginning of October, and we're going to have a couple weeks of individuals on the front end to build you up. So really, we're just, we want you to be able to throw on day one of practice a 15 to 20 pitch bullpen at high intent. Okay, so what does that look like for you building backwards from there? And that's where, your college coach can help you kind of, parse that out and figure out what that plan kind of looks like. But I think that, depending on how you feel, what you're doing, what you're going to do in the summer, how many innings you're going to throw, all of those things, and just be mindful that the fall is likely going to be a lot more than what you're used to from a throwing perspective, from a practice perspective, so that you want to make sure that you're going to be healthy going into and coming out of the fall, right? Like there's a lot of younger kids that are younger arms that'll go into the fall, and 3-4 weeks in, all of a sudden your arm's hanging, and you're not throwing the bullets it is that you're anticipating yourself or the coaching staff is, and it could be due to the previous 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 months of what you've done over the course of, from now until October. And if you think about it, right, if you're listening to this, you think about it, like it's we're recording this on February 17th. There's a high likelihood that if you're a Division I commit, like you're throwing into mid-October, right? So you got March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October. That's another 8 months. That's a lot of throwing if you're doing it over the course of, if you never shut down, even if it's just an abbreviated 2-week. Like, I'm just going to pick a ball up and move my arm, but I'm not doing anything high intent, bands, weighted balls, whatever it is your thing is. So I think the communication piece is big, but just understand that the fall is going to be a lot more to undertake from a freshman perspective, to make sure that you talk about how your arm's feeling, where you're at, what you're doing, and be honest about it, right? Like, I think that's one of the things that sometimes as younger kids, you want to kind of go in and prove yourself, and maybe your arm isn't at 100% going in, and you're afraid to say something. Like, you're better off saying something in July of like, hey, I'm feeling pretty tired over my last 3 or 4 starts. Like, is there any way I could like shut it down for 2-3 weeks, give my body about a chance to recover, and then ramp back up so that I'm good to go for the fall? That's better than trying to throw through it, get to the fall, throw 2 bullpens and an outing, and be like, yeah, I can't throw, because then you're behind the 8 ball, right? So be honest about it and how you're feeling and where you're at.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Like, the goal is to get there healthy, and what do you need to do to get there healthy? I think you're trying to thread the needle of how do you continue to develop from a pitchability perspective, which much of that, you can do quite a bit of that in the bullpen. But at the end of the day, the compete level, if you have the ability to do that and you can stay healthy through it and you're able to control your volume and you have a good setup where you can go and throw, that's great. And I think a lot of coaches would be fine with that. But there will be some coaches who are simply going to say, hey, you threw 50 innings this spring. We think you're better off really controlling volume and intent and the timing of which you're going to throw these bullpens. So we want you to kind of go into, quasi off-season mode and make sure that when you show up in the fall, you're ready to go. From a position player standpoint, if you have something convenient and you have something that's available to you close, and there are quite a few local leagues with college players. There's, some that are more competitive than others. But if you have the opportunity to go and get at bats and you're healthy and you're not banged up, I think most position players will benefit from that. The only thing that I would add from a caveat perspective is you need to be able to stay consistent in the weight room. And obviously we harp on this. It's a huge piece of the puzzle, but you need to make sure that when you get there in the fall, you're the strongest, fastest, and most physical that you've ever been. And you don't want to sacrifice that for 30 or 40 at bats. So just make sure that you have some sort of a schedule in place where you are able to get into the gym 3 or 4 times a week. You're able to do your mobility work, your speed work. So you're kind of treating it like an off season, but you've got games intertwined. Because at the end of the day, when you get to college, you're going to have to learn how to balance this anyways. You're going to be lifting during the season. You're going to be lifting consistently, and it's going to be a little bit more taxing, but eventually you start to build up some calluses and you're able to do it. And, your body benefits from it. It helps you stay healthy. It helps you stay strong. You maintain bat speed, foot speed, all that good stuff, all the stuff that we talk about. So if you have the opportunity to get some games in and it's not stretching you too thin, traveling a bunch of hours to try to go and get 3 or 4 at bats, I don't think there's many coaches out there who are going to tell you not to play. So that would be my thought from a position player standpoint. As long as you're healthy, go get at bats and go get some game experience. It moves.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that's going to hinder your play as a position player other than your health. I think again, to hammer the point home, make sure you're in the weight room, make sure you're in good shape, make sure you're getting your conditioning done. The workouts and things that that'll trickle in, make sure you're doing them so you have an idea of what it is that you're getting yourself into for the fall. But I think from a straight up playing standpoint, like try to play as many games as you possibly can, try to get as many at bats as you can. There's no real detriment to being able to do that stuff. And, conversely, try to get as many innings in the field as you possibly can. The more reps you get at game speed, the better, the better you're going to be when you get to campus. So, other than health hindering you, I don't necessarily think that there's a downside to playing. I would say, along the same lines as arms, you're going to want to make sure you're obviously in shape. Your body feels good. You don't necessarily have to play all the way up until school starts. It's not a bad idea to have a 2-week break in there towards the back end of the year where, you can go hit, 3, 4, 5 times a week, but it's not the constant gameplay every single day, just to kind of give your body some time to recover going into the fall. Obviously staying in the weight room and doing that stuff, but if the summer season ends, July 28th, you're good. Like, take the rest of the summer, enjoy it because you're going to college, enjoy it with your friends, and then just make sure that you're getting your work done. Wouldn't tell you to just pack it in and do nothing for 3 weeks because it'll be readily evident when you show up on campus that you haven't done anything for 3 weeks. But from a gameplay standpoint, it's not like you have to go play all the way up until school starts. Leave that for college summer ball.
Yeah, and if you don't have the ability to go play games, I think the weight room becomes even more important and you've got more time to do it. But there are other ways to get some game type looks, right? I think there's a ton of facilities now with pitchers that guys will be in and out during the summer. Go in there and ask them if they're going to throw live pens and if you can stand in and get some swings off. it never hurts to ask those types of things, and you can kind of get some live looks. If you're not able to do that, make sure that you're challenging yourself frequently from a velocity perspective, and try to get as close to a game look as you can. So you're not just kind of coasting through, taking batting practice and going through your lead up work, but you have some moments during the week where you're cranking it up a little bit and you're starting to test yourself against some spin. So try to pursue some of those opportunities as you can, and try not to make that dead space where you're just taking batting practice every day and you're lifting. Like, see if you can find those moments where you can stand in with somebody's throwing a bullpen, maybe even get some swings off, or go find a hack attack or some place that has a hack attack and get in there and crank it up a little bit and start to see some stuff that you're going to see in the fall.
Yeah, I think that's the easiest way, right? The most obvious way to try to get some game speed stuff that you can see. Hone in your swing. I think the biggest thing too is making sure that you're dialed in defensively. And if you're a catcher, if you can find a hack attack, you can catch off the hack attack and hit off the hack attack. So you can kill two birds with a proverbial one stone. But if you're an outfielder or infielder, do get out through the course of the week and take ground balls, take fly balls, and same thing. If you can get to a place where if they have a hack attack and it's outside, you can set that thing up to throw fly balls and ground balls, and you can get some live speed ground balls, fly balls that you can get reads on and make sure that you're sharp, because it'll be evident if you haven't really done much over the summer. I wouldn't necessarily say, like, if health is hindering you, then obviously, that's a conversation. I think it's along the same lines as arms. Like, that's a conversation you're going to have with the coaching staff, right? Hey, my legs, my hammy's all jacked up. I hasn't been right since the spring. I don't know if pressing it through the entire summer is a good idea. Like, what are some options for me to be able to do here? And at least that, you're upfront about it and they know. Nothing negative is going to happen. It's just like, hey, let's manage this so that you don't blow your hammy out and then you can't do anything until the spring. And at that point, we don't really know what you're capable of doing. And you've missed 9 months. And, the common theme there, right? Like, we worry about it in college of missing that time frame from a development standpoint to get these guys better and ready to play. It's the same thing when you're finishing your high school year into college. Like, these next 7, 8, 9 months are critical in what it is that you can do when you set foot on campus in order to, compete for playing time as a younger player in the program you're going to. And it holds true, I should say, as a caveat to all of this holds true at Division II, Division III, and JUCO, and NAIA too, right? Like, all of this is the same. The only difference is your fall is going to be a little less in Division III than it is in the other ones. But you still want to be healthy going into it so you can give a good account of yourself.
Parents, if you've ever felt overwhelmed trying to navigate youth sports, there's a new resource designed just for you, Team Match. Team Match is an online platform built to streamline how families find the right youth sports teams by location, sport, and skill level, all in one place. It also provides a safe, organized space for kids to share their accomplishments, stats, and highlights, while giving coaches and teams a clear way to connect with athletes who are the right fit. Less searching, less stress, more confidence in the process. Youth sports just got simpler for families. This is Team Match. Check it out today at teammatchsports.com. Yeah, it's the first opportunity you have to make an impression, and you want to make sure you go in there as close to 100% as you can. You want to present the best version of yourself and go in there and compete and be ready for what you're about to undertake, which is your first year of college baseball. And we've spoke about it before. It's the longest year from a baseball perspective that you're ever going to experience end to end. So making sure you're physically ready to go is probably priority number one. If you have the ability to throw those innings, if you have the ability to get those at bats, wonderful. Those reps are always going to be beneficial for you. But at the end of the day, it's about being able to show up whenever you're asked to report to school and make sure that you're ready to go. The only other, and this is for a smaller percentage of this group, this is generally going to be kind of the upper levels of Division I, but it is a more common theme these days, and you probably have already had these conversations with your coaches if this is what their intent is that they are bringing players onto campus in the summer. They get them into their weight program, they get access to the facilities, and you typically take a 3-credit course and you're able to kind of get some of that stuff out of the way, figure out where you're going to go on campus, what your day-to-day is going to look like. So if you've got that built in, that's going to check a lot of boxes for you already. They're going to get you acclimated to the verbiage they use, the weight program. You're going to get a chance to move around campus a bunch. So if you've got that going for you and you're in one of those programs where they bring players on campus in the summer, then you're good to go. Just do what you're told to do and do it well, and dot your I's and cross your T's on a day-to-day basis. That would be the only other scenario that I could think of that we really need to kind of account for.
Yeah. And there's more schools out there doing that.
Yeah, it's a more common thing for sure.
It's a lot more common in the last 3, 4, 5 years, and I assume that it's going to be even more common rolling forward. And it's not a terrible idea to where you can get ahead from an academic standpoint / maybe take a lighter load in the spring because you're going to be traveling a lot more, right? So instead of taking 15, you can take 12, but just know that you can't drop below 12. 12 is where the eligibility line is drawn.
And if you need more details on that, go back to our episode with Alyssa Gates.
Yes.
We cover that in detail. But I don't really have anything else to add there. I mean, I think it's about being there healthy, and anything that you can add on to that is going to be a bonus.
I concur.
All right. Well, thank you for listening, everybody. Tune in next week. We'll have more for you then. Thank you. Thank you for listening this week. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and smash that like button for us. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, as well as Spotify. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at EMD Baseball. If you want to find out what me and Keith do to help families and players navigate the recruiting process, go ahead and check us out on emdbaseball.com. Take a few minutes to check out our new online academy. I promise you'll get some good information out of that. Thanks again for listening. Check in with you next week.